I found the shed door open when I went to put the lawn mower away. I'd locked it that morning. I know I did because the key stuck in the padlock like it always does, and I had to jiggle it. The padlock was gone now, just the hasp hanging loose. I stood there holding the mower handle, looking into the dark shed. All my tools were still on the pegboard. The expensive hedge trimmer was still on its hook. Nothing looked disturbed, but someone had been inside. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight, swept it across the interior, everything in its place. Then I saw the dirt, fresh potting soil scattered across the workbench. I didn't use potting soil. I didn't garden. The yard was just grass and the 2 trees that came with the house. There was a clay pot on the bench. New, still had the price sticker. It was planted with something dark leaves, thick stem. I stepped closer. The plant looked wrong. Wet. The leaves were glistening like they'd been coated in something. I touched the soil. It was warm, not sun warm, body warm. I backed out of the shed and called my landlord. Told him someone broke into the shed, asked if he'd been by the property. He said no, asked if anything was stolen. I said no, but someone left something. He said to throw it away and he'd replace the lock. I said okay. I didn't throw the plant away. I left it on the bench and closed the shed door. Went inside. Made dinner, tried to forget about it. At midnight I heard scraping sounds from the backyard. Metal on concrete. I looked through the kitchen window. Someone was dragging my wheelbarrow across the patio. The shed door was open again. The motion light was on. I could see him clearly. Older man, maybe 60, wearing canvas work gloves and a denim shirt. He positioned the wheelbarrow next to my garden bed, the strip of dirt along the fence that I'd never planted anything in. He went back to the shed. I unlocked my phone, started to dial. He came out of the shed carrying the clay pot with the plant. He set it carefully in the wheelbarrow, then went back inside. Came out with a shovel, my shovel. He started digging in the garden bed. Not frantic, methodical. He dug for 3 minutes while I stood at the window with 911 typed into my phone but not called. I don't know why I didn't call. He transplanted the thing from the clay pot into the hole, buried the roots, tamped down the soil with his boot. Then he stood back and looked at it, nodded to himself, satisfied. He picked up the empty clay pot and the shovel and walked them back to the shed, put everything away, closed the door, walked across my yard to the back gate and let himself out. I heard the latch click. I waited 5 minutes. Then I went outside with a flashlight. The plant was there in the garden bed exactly where he'd put it. The soil around it was mounded and neat, professional. It looked like it belonged there. I grabbed the shovel from the shed and dug it up. Took 10 minutes to get all the roots. They went down deeper than they should have for something that size. When I finally pulled it free, the roots were tangled around something hard. I brushed off the dirt. It was a padlock, my padlock, the one that had been missing from the shed door. It was locked shut, but there was something trapped in the shackle, a strip of fabric, denim. I pulled at it and more came out of the soil. A piece of shirt, maybe 4 inches long, torn along one edge. It was damp and smelled like the potting soil, like something warm and living. I dropped the plant, went back inside, locked the door, called the police, told them someone had been in my yard. They asked if the person was still there. I said no. They said they'd send someone. I sat at the kitchen table with the lights on until the officer arrived 40 minutes later. Showed him the plant on the ground, the disturbed soil, the fabric. He examined it all with his flashlight. Asked if I recognized the material. I said no. He bagged the fabric and the padlock. Asked if I had security cameras. I said no. He took my statement and said they'd increase patrols in the area. After he left, I threw the plant in the trash bin at the curb. Put the whole root ball in a garbage bag and tied it shut. Pickup was the next morning. When I woke up, the plant was back in the garden bed, replanted, watered. The trash bin was still at the curb, but the bag was gone. I checked the whole bin, empty except for the regular kitchen trash. I dug up the plant again. This time I didn't find a padlock. I found a key, small brass key crusted with soil. It looked old. I rinsed it off. No markings. I tried it in my back door, didn't fit, tried the shed, didn't fit, tried the gate lock. It turned smoothly and the lock popped open. I'd never seen that lock before. It wasn't mine. Someone had replaced my gate lock while I was inside. I removed it and threw it and the key as far as I could into the alley behind my fence. I burned the plant in my fire pit that afternoon, doused it with lighter fluid and watched it burn down to ash. It didn't burn like a plant. It burned slow and wet and the smoke was thick and stuck in my throat. That night the old man came back. I was waiting this time. Watched through the dark kitchen as he opened the gate with no lock and walked to the garden bed where the plant had been. He knelt in the ash and dirt, stayed there for a long time, just kneeling. Then he started digging with his bare hands. No tools, digging in the same spot deeper. I couldn't see what he was doing, but I could hear it, scraping, breathing, digging. I turned on the floodlight. The yard lit up bright and white. He didn't stop, didn't even look up, just kept digging. His hands were black with soil up to his elbows. I opened the back door, stepped onto the patio. He finally stopped and turned his head toward me. His face was in shadow, but I could see his eyes. He wasn't angry. He looked disappointed. It needed 3 more days, he said. He stood up, brushed the dirt off his hands, and walked past me toward the side gate. I didn't move. He stopped next to me, close enough that I could smell the soil on him. "You'll replant it," he said. He left through the side gate. I heard it close. I went to the garden bed and looked in the hole he'd dug. It went down 2 feet. At the bottom was fresh potting soil, warm to the touch, and a new clay pot waiting. The sprinklers came on at 2:47 a.m. and woke me up. I heard them through the open bedroom window, that rhythmic ticking sound they make. Wrong night. I had them programmed for Thursdays and Sundays. It was Tuesday. I got up to turn them off manually. The control box was mounted on the side of the garage. I grabbed my phone for the flashlight and went outside in my boxers and t-shirt. Summer night, warm enough that I didn't think about it. The side yard was narrow, 6 feet between my house and the fence. The motion light should have clicked on when I came around the corner. It didn't. I used my phone light and found the control box. The timer was cycling through Zone 3. I punched the button to shut it off. The sprinklers in Zone 3 stopped. The ones in Zone 1 started. I hit the button again. Zone 1 stopped. Zone 4 started. I held down the reset button. All the zones activated at once. Water shooting up everywhere, soaking the grass, the flower beds, the side of my house, soaking me. I opened the box to kill the main power. The wiring inside was wrong, crossed in ways that didn't match what I'd set up 6 months ago when I installed the system myself. Someone had been in the box. I shut off the master valve manually and the water stopped. Stood there dripping, looking at the wires. They'd been deliberately rerouted, thoroughly. This wasn't damage or corrosion. Someone had spent time doing this. I swept my phone light across the side yard. That's when I saw the footprints in the wet dirt along the fence. Boot prints, fresh, leading from the back gate to where I was standing, then back again. Multiple trips. The prints were deep in some places, like someone had been standing still for a while. One set of prints stopped directly below my bedroom window. I checked my phone. No notifications, no missed calls. The security app I'd installed last year after the break-ins on our street showed all clear. Cameras on the front door and driveway, nothing on the sides or back. I'd been meaning to add those. I went to the back gate. It was open, not wide, just unlatched. I always locked it with a padlock. The padlock was on the ground, not cut, just opened. I picked it up. It was still locked, but the shackle had been rotated out of the body. You could do that if you knew the combination or if you worked at it long enough. I should have gone back inside. Instead, I walked into the backyard and checked the flower beds along the back fence. I'd planted new roses 3 weeks ago. Expensive ones my wife had wanted for her birthday. 12 bushes bare root, just starting to establish. They'd all been dug up, not ripped out, carefully excavated and removed. The holes were still there, neat and empty, the soil piled beside each one. No roots, no stems, completely gone. I called the police. Told them someone had been in my yard, vandalized my sprinkler system, stolen plants. The dispatcher asked if I felt threatened. I said no, they were gone. She said they'd send an officer when one was free, probably within the hour. Non-emergency. I went back inside, locked the door, checked on my wife still asleep. I didn't wake her. I sat in the kitchen with the lights off and watched the backyard through the window. At 3:20 a.m., someone walked past the back fence. I only saw them for a second, silhouetted against the streetlight in the alley, carrying something large and awkward. Could have been a bag, could have been bundled plants. I grabbed a flashlight and went out the back door. The alley ran behind 6 houses. Trash cans, recycling bins, privacy fences on both sides. I pointed the flashlight down the alley, empty in both directions. Then I smelled it, fresh dirt, and something else underneath, something chemical and sharp, like fertilizer but wrong. I found the roses 50 feet down the alley, replanted in the dirt strip behind my neighbor's fence. All 12 bushes arranged in a perfect line. They'd even been watered. The soil around them was dark and wet. I knelt down and touched one. The roots had been carefully spread, properly buried. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. My neighbor's name was printed on his trash can. I barely knew him. Older guy, lived alone, kept to himself. I pulled out my phone to take pictures. The flash went off and I saw something I'd missed. Small white tags tied to each rose stem with garden wire. The kind you use to label plants. I leaned closer. Each tag had my wife's name written on it in neat block letters. 12 tags, 12 roses, her full name spelled correctly. I heard a door open. Not behind me, ahead, farther down the alley. I killed the flashlight. Listened. Footsteps on concrete, slow, steady, coming toward me. I didn't wait to see who it was. I ran back to my house, locked the door, turned on every outside light. Called 911 this time. Told them someone was in the alley behind my house, that I needed an officer now. They arrived 14 minutes later, checked the alley, found the roses, asked why someone would replant stolen flowers behind a neighbor's fence. I didn't tell them about the tags. I'd pulled those off and shoved them in my pocket before I ran. I don't know why I did that. The officers knocked on my neighbor's door. No answer. They said they'd follow up in the morning. They asked if anything else was missing. I said no. After they left, I checked the side yard again. The sprinkler box was closed. I opened it. The wiring was back to normal, exactly the way I'd originally installed it. Perfect. My wife asked about the police cars when she woke up. I told her someone had been messing with yards in the neighborhood. Vandalism. She asked if our yard was okay. I said yes. The roses are still there behind my neighbor's fence, growing. I see them when I take the trash out. He's never mentioned them. I was pulling weeds along the fence line when I noticed the guy standing in my neighbor's yard, watching me. Not looking over casually. Watching. He was maybe 40 feet away, hands in his pockets, completely still. My neighbors were on vacation. I'd been watering their plants all week. Their yard was empty. I kept working. Told myself he was a relative checking on the house, but he didn't move toward the door, didn't call out, just stood there while I knelt in the dirt with my back to the street. I was wearing earbuds, but I'd paused my music 10 minutes earlier. He didn't know that. When I glanced back again, he'd moved closer to the fence. Same posture, same stare. The privacy fence only went halfway down the property line. Where I was working, just chain link, 3 feet high. I stood up, brushed off my knees. He smiled. It wasn't friendly. Doing a good job, he said. I didn't answer. Picked up my garden tools and started walking toward my back door. He moved parallel to me on his side of the chain link, matching my pace, not rushing. The metal tools felt light in my hands, useless. "You here alone?" he asked. I was. My husband wouldn't be home for 4 hours. I said no and kept walking. He stopped following when I reached the gate to my backyard. I went inside and locked the door, watched through the kitchen window. He stood at the fence for another minute, then walked back toward the street. Not toward my neighbor's house, toward the street. I called my neighbor, asked if they'd sent anyone to check on the place. They hadn't. They asked if I wanted them to call the police. I said no. He was gone. I felt stupid. 20 minutes later, I went back out. I'd left the hand rake and cultivator in the front yard, $60 of tools. I needed to finish the weeding before the sun got too high. I told myself he was just some creep passing through the neighborhood. The tools weren't where I'd left them. They were lined up neatly on my front porch, handles all facing the same direction, positioned right in front of my door like someone had made a deliberate arrangement. I hadn't heard anyone come up the steps. The porch was wood. It creaked when my husband walked across it. I went back inside, locked the door. This time I called the police. Non-emergency line. I told them what happened. They said they'd send someone when a unit was available, probably an hour. I said that was fine. I watched from the living room window. The street was empty. No cars I didn't recognize. No one on foot. Just the sound of a lawn mower 2 houses down and kids playing somewhere nearby. Normal summer afternoon sounds. Then I saw him in my backyard. He was kneeling exactly where I'd been kneeling earlier, pulling the same weeds I'd been pulling, using my cultivator, the one that had been on my porch 30 seconds ago. I hadn't heard the back gate open. He worked slowly, methodically, like he had all the time in the world. I ran to the back door, still locked. I checked every window on the ground floor, all locked. He couldn't have gotten the tool unless he'd come onto the porch again. I would have heard it. I was standing 15 feet from the front door. I called 911, told them someone was in my yard. They said a unit was already dispatched to my address, ETA 12 minutes. I said he was there right now. They told me to stay inside, stay on the line. I stayed on the line. I watched him work. He pulled weeds for 8 minutes while I described him to the dispatcher. Then he stood up, brushed the dirt off his knees the same way I had, and looked directly at my kitchen window. He waved. Small wave, almost polite. He walked to my back door and tried the handle. It didn't turn. He nodded like he was confirming something to himself. The dispatcher asked if he was leaving. I said no. He was walking around the side of the house toward the front. She told me to move away from the windows, go to an interior room. I went to the half bathroom in the hallway, no windows. I locked myself in and sat on the floor. I heard the police arrive 6 minutes later, heard them talking in my front yard, heard them walk around back. One of them knocked on my door and identified himself. I let them in. They didn't find anyone, no signs of forced entry, no footprints in the dirt that shouldn't be there. The ground was too dry. They took my statement. They checked my neighbor's property. Empty. They asked if I'd seen him leave. I said no, I'd been in the bathroom. One officer asked if I'd been drinking. I said no. He nodded and wrote something down. After they left, I found the cultivator in the backyard, stuck in the dirt where he'd been working. He'd finished the entire section I'd started. The weeds were gone. The soil was neat. He'd done a better job than I had. The hand rake was on my back porch. I know I brought both tools to the front when I ran inside the first time. My husband came home and checked the locks, the crawl space, the attic. Nothing. He installed cameras the next day. Motion sensors. We got a dog. The weeds grew back in that section of the yard within a week. I haven't touched them. Neither has my husband. Last Tuesday, I looked out the kitchen window and they were gone again. Pulled clean. The dirt turned and smoothed. We were both home. The cameras didn't catch anything. The dog never barked.